So easy yin, we're going to start with a banana pose. Just come onto your back, move your hips to the right side of the mat, and then move your legs to the left, move your arms, head, neck, shoulders to the left. And you want to feel some stretching here in the waist and the ribs. And that's pretty much it. As long as you feel safe and as long as you feel like you can hold this for 3 minutes, again, that's our goal today is the 3 minutes, then you're good. Most of you have heard me talk about, most or maybe all of you have heard me talk about the benefits of that before, so I don't think I need to mention it again today. So just coming to that position, and then the beautiful thing about yin is there's really nothing else that we need to do. We don't need to breathe in a certain way. We don't need to focus our mind, concentrate. We don't need to be mindful. I don't like combining those practices with yin yoga because it goes against the grain of what we're trying to do with yin. Okay, so we're just relaxing, giving time and space for that stretch to happen. Okay, and we've just got about 2 more minutes left here. All right, everybody, so let's switch sides. And as you come through center, as I often encourage, you might just take a moment, see if you can feel the difference between the two sides. Okay, and then you can come over to the other side. There's a few reasons I have you do that. So some of you may stop and try that and be like, I don't feel anything. And that's fine. I don't want you to feel bad about that or guilty or like, you know, there's something wrong with you. I will say, though, that usually that indicates a certain lack of body awareness or body sensitivity. Now, again, it has nothing to do with our value as human beings. So often we hear these things and we self-judge. We think, oh, well, there's something wrong with me. Usually when we lack that body awareness, it's because at some point during childhood, we learned that feeling the body was not to our advantage for whatever reason. And that can include emotions because emotions are felt in your body. So, you know, let's say we're a young boy and we're crying, we're really sad, we're really upset about something. And our parent says something like, you're a big boy now, you know, you're not supposed to cry, or something along those lines. In some way, what we were feeling and experiencing was invalidated, and we learned that we weren't going to get love or appreciation or our parents' approval if we felt the things we were feeling. And it doesn't matter whether that's real or not. What's important is how the child understood it. Okay, because children don't think the way that adults think. So a child isn't going to say, well, dad is clearly stressed out. He's had a lot on his plate at work. He's just venting. He's not really upset about, what I did, or he's not really trying to invalidate or gaslight my feelings. He's just in a bad mood. So I won't listen to him. I'm not going to take to heart what he's saying. No, that's not how children operate. So the child will feel like there's something wrong with me. I need to change in some fundamental way. And what they can do is learn to repress and shut down and shut out awareness of the body. Because again, whether it's a physical sensation or an emotions are felt in the body. So this is something that many of us have gone through at one point or another, whether it was at home or in school. Again, we might feel like we need to get up and run around, but our teacher is saying, no, sit down, be quiet, stop wiggling, stop moving, those types of things. So what a child can learn is feeling the body, feeling the urges and impulses of the body gets me in trouble. So I don't do that. I learn to shut that off, to shut that down. Let's go ahead and come on out of this and we'll rebound for a moment. Good, and then let's do a little counter stretch with our legs. So just shake things out a little bit. And then our next pose is on the back, so we'll just simply take our legs out straight again, okay? All right, cattail is next. So we take the left leg straight up and we drop it over to the right. Prop your head up and the hand and elbow, at least for now. And then take the legs apart and bend the knee, reach back and grab the foot. You want to feel stretch in the front of your thigh, the right thigh. Okay. Left leg can be straight or bent, closer to the face or further away. You can keep your head in your hand, rested on the upper arm, rested on a pillow or a folded blanket or a bolster, or even straight on the ground. Left shoulder can stay stacked above the right, or you can lay back. Just try and avoid laying forward because that negates the twist that we're trying to create here with this posture. Okay, so again, many of us, by the time we're adults and practicing yoga, which is when most people come to yoga, some kids are introduced to yoga at a very young age, but most Americans anyway don't practice yoga until they're well into adulthood many times. Again, I've had, some teens or people who are younger practicing yoga, but usually people are at least in their 20s, often 30s, and then very, very often people in their 40s and beyond are the ones in America who are seeking out yoga. And for many reasons, there are many reasons that come to yoga: fitness, stress relief, spiritual guidance or questions, things of that nature. So by the time we come to yoga, very often we have completely shut down awareness of the body, and that's just called being disembodied. So your experience of life, whether you realize it or not, is sort of like this disembodied. You identify with your thoughts, and you don't really identify with the body can feel a lot that you tune out, and generally what gets through are the extremes. So someone who's disembodied, extreme pleasure will get through, and extreme pain. And so they will, avoid things that cause extreme pain. They will seek out things that cause extreme pleasure, but there's a lot of range in the middle where it's like, oh, I don't really feel anything. No, I don't, I'm not sensing that. And the truth is that what meditators find is that our awareness is actually really, really sensitive. So the body can signal us in all sorts of small ways. The question is, are we listening? Do we feel like it's safe to listen? So I want to say one thing, because I mentioned parents and teachers earlier and how that often leads to this. I don't want anyone to leave thinking that parents and teachers had ill intent, because they didn't. Everyone is really doing the best they can. Even a parent that is dysfunctional and ends up abusing their child and really causing harm to that child, that individual just doesn't know how to do any different. It's unfortunate, but it happens. There's no process through which someone who is dysfunctional and doesn't know how to relate in a healthy way is prevented from having children. So this means that psychotics, people with personality disorder, people with neuroses, people with narcissism, every type of person can have a child and raise that child. All right? So we have to understand this. All right, let's switch sides. Okay, this is the cat tail. So again, someone who is a narcissist, for instance, that narcissist is navigating life in the best way that they know how. They probably aren't consciously thinking of how to do evil or harm to you. Now, there may be mental conditions where people actually are like that or evil or whatever, but the vast majority of people are not in that camp or boat. Vast majority of people are, again, just trying to do the best they can. They're trying to get love and navigate life in the best way that they know how. Whether or not that is functional or not, whether or not that makes sense or actually works is a completely different question. So many people have maps of how to navigate life and love and interpersonal relationships that are not accurate. So in a book called The Road Less Traveled, M. Scott Peck talks a little bit about this. And so, we can have a map of how to navigate life that is accurate, and generally what we'll find is that produces better results. And then we can have a map that's inaccurate. And the funny thing is we can have a map that's inaccurate that's producing really poor results, and yet we don't give up the map. So this is where very often people will enter into either a spiritual inquiry. They'll begin to ask questions spiritually, or psychological, and sometimes both. So they'll begin to ask questions of, why is this part of my life lacking? Why am I having difficulty with this or that? Why do I feel this way? So again, usually people have to have some difficulty and then recognize the difficulty, and then recognize that it's something that they can do something about within themselves, that it may be a pattern that they have inside of themselves, and then they can begin to ask questions to heal that. So again, I don't want anyone to feel like, oh, I don't have body awareness and my parents are to blame for that. They were evil, or they were bad, or they were unconscious, or whatever it might be. Again, my parents, less than ideal, but I know for a fact they loved me and they were doing the best that they could. And that's generally true of the vast majority of parents. If they were less than ideal, it's because they probably had an upbringing that was also less than ideal, or they had wounds that were unhealed and they didn't know how to heal them. They didn't know how to do any different. Okay, let's unwind onto our back. We're just going to relax for a few moments. So the rebound's a great time to tune in, right? What do you feel? Do you feel anything? Maybe you begin to describe it yourself a little bit, right? Maybe there are emotions there, and you can try and tune in to those emotions and describe them. All right, let's bring our legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze. You can shake it out a little bit. And then this time we'll hinge up to seated. Okay, the half butterfly is next. So right leg is straight, left foot to the inside of the thigh. Feel free to put a block under this knee, your forearms or forehead if you need a little extra support. Just don't lose the stretch in the back of the right thigh as you do that, okay? So emotions, again, feeling the body, feeling emotions. I was just, I think yesterday, reading a book where this gentleman was talking about how he was speaking with his romantic partner, and they were talking about their emotions. And she asked him how he felt, and he didn't really know, and he couldn't really describe his emotions. And then he asked her, and she had all these very nuanced, fine ways of describing what she was feeling. She had like several different emotions that were present regarding him. So they were talking about their relationship. And this relates to something else I read, which I thought was interesting, which is in this other book about emotional intelligence, they said often men in our culture are allowed one emotion, which is like anger and frustration. That's considered manly. It's considered okay. So a man can get angry and get frustrated. He can yell and scream. But vulnerability, other emotions, not considered manly. Again, I was told quite a bit growing up, if I was crying, displaying something like that, oh, that's not, you're too big for that. You're a big boy now. The implication is like, you're not supposed to feel that. There's something wrong with you. You're being unmanly, right? So again, for better or worse, many men grow up with this message that it's like, it's not okay to feel emotions. And so very often when they feel an emotion, it is interpreted as the one emotion that men are allowed. Now, again, this isn't my opinion. I happen to agree with it, but these are things I've read in books about psychology. So you may agree, you may disagree, but I'm not the originator of this idea. So very often men will interpret everything as anger or frustration. That's sort of where it gets to. So they're confused, they might feel vulnerable, they might feel scared, but they won't say that. They'll just express anger, frustration, because it's the one emotion that was condoned, it was allowed. And again, this may not have been overt. It might have been very subvert. So again, a boy displaying vulnerability or crying or something, he might be just ignored. And so again, until he gets angry, upset, people may not pay attention to him. Whereas very often in our culture, women are encouraged to get in touch with their feelings and to communicate different emotions and understand their emotions. And so by the time we are adults, many women have a vast vocabulary and they're very in touch with their emotions. And many men don't have any vocabulary and they are not in touch with their emotions. Let's switch sides.
So interestingly, when you get into this work like I have, you eventually learn that again, emotions are felt in the body. And so one way of cutting off from emotions, not feeling emotions, is to basically numb or cut off awareness of the body. And as I said earlier, that's called disembodiment. Other people that experience this are people who go through a traumatic experience. So if there is some traumatic experience involving the body, we can learn to disassociate in very, very powerful ways. So I have worked with a few different clients who've had that experience, usually around some kind of sexual trauma in youth, and they just learn to not feel their body, to be away from their body. And so the body is communicating a lot of information to them, but again, because of such a traumatic experience, they don't feel like it's safe to feel their body, to feel what their body is feeling, that it's not okay. Um, and so, again, when we start practicing yoga, however it happened to us, we want to start tuning back in because it's very difficult, if not impossible, to live a happy and fulfilling and healthy human life if your mind and your body are disassociated. And again, I would say from what I've seen, this is most people. So again, I don't want you to feel like, well, I'm the only one. There's something wrong with me. I'm sick or damaged. I'd say most Americans are in that category. So one of the things we start to do with yoga is we start to tune back in. And this is one of the reasons why I have you do the rebound. So the rebound is, 30 seconds or a minute or so where you're just sort of asking questions like, what do I feel? Where do I feel it? How would I describe that sensation? Or it could, again, be an emotion. And that's why we don't want to counter stretch right away, because the counter stretch is, I want to get rid of that feeling. I want to get rid of that feeling. I don't like that feeling. Let me get rid of it. And we do this with physical sensations. We also do it with emotions. So again, ways we do it with emotions are, drinking, drugs, consuming a lot of television or playing video games, again, ways of distracting the mind from the body. Um, and again, these can be very unhealthy when they are at an extreme. All right, let's go ahead and come on out of that. And again, let's rebound. So let's see what we can feel as we come back. And again, your mind might tell you that that's silly and unimportant and it's got better things to do. And part of your job in yoga is to ignore those thoughts and just begin to tune back in. All right, let's bring the legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze. And then let's hinge up. And we'll come into tabletop and do a little bit of the bear here. So whether we're still or moving, there's always opportunity to feel the body. And again, if this is not something you're very good at, then you can try just describing what you're feeling to yourself. And that will help to start to engage the mind in the experience of the body. At a certain point, you realize that really words don't get to whatever it is that you're feeling, but that can be a kind of intermediary step. Let's do a little down dog here as well. And then we'll bring that right knee forward and we want to feel the stretch in the outside of the right hip. Okay, this is the sleeping swan. All right, so the other thing I'll say again about parenting and what happens with parents is it may be unavoidable that children will interpret and experience certain things that parents do not intend to be traumatic or problematic for the child. It may be inevitable that, again, a child sees the world differently, experiences it very differently, and we're not mind readers. So if you're very in tune with your child's feelings, you may tune in to when they shut down or when they feel like you've cut them off from your love or approval or appreciation, which is very important to them. This isn't to say you shouldn't discipline children; they absolutely need it. But there's a difference between discipline and, I don't approve of you, I don't love you, which is often how children take that. So when they do something quote unquote wrong, very often they just tend to internalize that as, oh, there's something wrong with me. And so there is a way to parent in a way that you're letting it, that action was wrong, but there's nothing wrong with you. We all make wrong actions. And this is something like that was very much lacking from my own upbringing. My parents would act like they somehow did everything perfectly, that they were like without fault. And, they would work very hard to try and hide any fault of their own. They wouldn't really readily admit, oh, I'm sorry, that was my mistake. I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have said that, or I was a little harsh on you, or anything like that. It was just parents were like perfect, and kids would mess up all the time, and kids needed to be corrected and fixed and all this kind of stuff. So again, I doubt my parents understood what they were doing, but what they were doing is laying groundwork for a sense of lack, a sense of like there's something wrong with me, right? And then that can manifest in all sorts of ways as adults. So again, it's not parents being evil or trying to do this kind of thing. Usually it's just a lack of awareness. Like I said, if you're very in tune with your child, you may be able to sense when they start to kind of disconnect in that way. And that would be a great time to step in and say, do you understand that you're loved no matter what? That, yes, that behavior was absolutely not acceptable. I'm not going to accept that. You will be punished if you do that. But you are loved. And this is the middle ground between maybe the way that I was raised and then how some parents are trying to raise their children today, which is like everyone gets a gold star, no one gets punished, everything you do is okay. That's not really true either, and that is problematic. All right, let's go ahead and switch sides. So oftentimes things tend to be on a sort of pendulum. And so I think this is just the pendulum swing. Many people who grew up with parents that, again, were overly disapproving, who would point out faults and never point out good things. Again, this was a very common parenting style. There were books written that would, actually encourage this kind of thing. My father once said that his father told him, if I don't say anything, you're doing a good job. And if I have to say something, then, that means you're doing something wrong. So again, this was sort of a whole philosophy of, if I approve of you, I don't need to say anything. I'm not going to say good job. I'm not going to say I love you. I'm not going to say anything like that. I'm just going to be quiet. And then if you mess up, I'm going to let you know. So as psychological and emotional beings that humans are, it's not a great strategy. But again, pendulum, I think many people and many parents swung in the opposite direction. So a tendency to not want to punish, not to see a child get upset, any of these sorts of things is a reaction to this very harsh way that used to be more prominent. And it probably was overdone. And so, people will talk about some of the generations that are coming up now and some of the problems that they have integrating into the workforce and integrating into larger structures because they were sort of catered to when they were children. And again, this is a very broad stroke thing, so I'm not pointing fingers at anyone in particular. If you're of a younger generation and that doesn't describe you, it doesn't describe you. So you don't need to take offense. I'm just talking about things I've read about in business and where people in workplaces, there can be difficulty with that. A child who was raised sort of where they could make no mistake, they could do no wrong, and all their wants are catered to, which sounds wonderful, right? It sounds like, oh, that's the childhood I want. I would feel so loved, I would feel so appreciated. But human beings are social, and we don't always get what we want. We aren't always approved of. We don't always do things right. We do make mistakes, right? And so if there's no mechanism through which I can learn I made a mistake and I need to correct that, that's a problem. But again, there's a difference between that and I'm not loved. So we can make mistakes and still be loved. But the way many parents used to parent, at least, was the way I let you know you messed up is by withdrawing my love, or at least making you feel that way. All right, let's go ahead and come on out of that. And it could be a combination of that with not only am I withdrawing my love, but there's again something fundamentally wrong with you. And I just don't think that this distinction was very well teased out in the past. All right. Our next posture is Sphinx or Seal, which is a back bend. So we just prop ourselves up on the elbows here. And if you want to go a little deeper, you can straighten your arms like so. Okay, so we want to feel a little bit of compression in the low back. This is another aspect, again, of tuning back in. Where do I feel the posture? And so again, in the yin postures, I'm always telling you, you should feel it here, you should feel it there. In flow, I do less of that because it's just faster moving and there's just less time to communicate those things. But in yin, we've got a long time to kind of tune in and really feel what's going on in our body. And then again, if we don't do it during the posture, we should at least at the beginning, because again, you want to, do I feel it in the right area? Do I feel safe? And then during the rebound, again, there's going to be a sort of after glow, if you will, of the experience of the posture, and we also want to tune into that. And these are ways that we begin to embody our experience again. We begin to move back into the body. I had an interesting session with somebody who did a private consultation with me. And this is someone who's going through a lot of emotional difficulty with a breakup relationship that had broken up for them. And they were describing their meditation. And I pointed out something to them that is very common. A lot of people think that meditation is about their head, and they think that meditation is about repeating some mantra or visualizing some idyllic scene or focusing on their breath and getting their heart rate down and calming themselves down. And those are all things that can happen and have value. So I'm not devaluing any of those practices, but one of the most valuable things that can happen in meditation is when you let go of the reins, the control, which is what we're normally trying to do, right? We're normally if we're awake, we're trying to control our focus, control our mind, control our emotions, behave a certain way. So what if we just meditate and we don't try and control anything? We just allow ourselves to feel what we're feeling. And so I encouraged him to go into his body, right? Instead of being up in his head, I said, why don't you meditate and feel your body? And he contacted me like a few days or a week later, and he said that's a complete game changer for me. And this is someone who's an experienced meditator. But I find that this is a common misconception or idea that people have, that meditation is being up in your head. It's up here, it's very lofty, it doesn't have to do with the body, but it absolutely, at least the way I teach it, has to do with your body. All right, let's come down. And then press back into tabletop. And with your hips over your knees, take your knees as wide as they'll go. This is the frog pose. And we want to feel it in here, the inside of the thighs. So this is called somatic, which is both in spirituality and in psychology at the moment, there is an increasing awareness of the value of somatic practices. And this is why I really like yoga as a mode for health and happiness and healing, is because at least the way yoga is taught today, there's very much a body component involved. So there are many spiritual and psychological avenues you can go where you're not really asked to tune into your body. It's a very, well, tell me about your dreams. Tell me about your mother. All this kind of stuff. But what about what you're feeling and experiencing in your body? There is a growing body of evidence that shows that actually physical ailments can be caused by psychological repression. So it can have actually an emotional root. Something like, oh, I have this chronic pain in my back that just won't go away no matter what I do. That can actually have a psychological root cause, okay? So again, this is happening both in spirituality and in psychology right now. There tends to be a growing awareness and movement that the body, the mind, the heart, these are not as separate as we tend to think, and that we may not be able to experience physical health and wholeness over a lifetime if we have, say, childhood traumatic wounds that are unhealed. These will tend to show up. And in my experience, as you age, you lose some of your, I don't know what you'd call it, your physical energy, pure kind of physical prowess tends to dissipate as you age. So when you're very young, all that energy that you might have might mask any of the trauma. But I think my theory is, I can't prove this, but my theory is that if you have not healed those traumas, as you begin to age, they begin to show back up in your body. So that's where you start to have, chronic pain in your back, or, pain in other parts of your body. These are places where you have probably some unresolved emotional work to do. And again, there's no shame around that. It doesn't mean that you even knew it was there. But it is an opportunity to begin to look into that. All right, let's go ahead and come on out of that. And we'll make our way onto our back. Let's just rebound. And again, a rebound is an opportunity to feel the body. That's the starting place, I would say. That's where you want to start. What do I feel physically? But then again, you can also tune in emotionally, right? What's my mood? Has it shifted at all during this practice? Did that posture bring up a certain emotion or feeling? And you can even notice your thoughts, where your mind is. What are you thinking about? Are you with your body mentally?
Or is your mind off, making a list or finishing the next task at work or whatever it might be? Okay, let's go ahead and bring our legs in and shake it out a little bit. And then let's go ahead and take the right knee over the left. I'm going to drop the knees to the left there. And this is called the twisted roots, okay? So generally you want your shoulders to remain on the ground and the right hip is drawn over the left. All right, I do need to mention that because again, from time to time, I see someone who's doing this. I saw it this week. So this is somebody who just doesn't really understand biomechanically what we're trying to do. So returning to this theme or idea of being embodied, I had a friend who was a yoga teacher and a physical therapist, and she was talking about a client of hers who had torn their ACL, which is a tendon in the ankle, I believe. And she said that that's an extremely painful injury and that it is preceded with a lot of pain. But this person had continued to run and basically tuned out the pain and eventually created an injury that required surgery. And so, her comment to me was, it takes a lot. Like there was a lot of pain there that was being ignored and tuned out. And again, this is something that our culture sometimes encourages people to do, that you simply need to tune out the pain and work through it. And I will say that sometimes we do need to do that with discomfort because it's odd. We're in a weird place where we're very often driven by seeking comfort in many, many things. So some people, they won't go to the gym and, lift weights or go for a run or even do hot yoga. They're, oh, I don't like sweating. I don't like the heat. And they live in a kind of cocoon where it's like their bed, their couch, their television, and their car. And that's basically where they live. And they don't get out of that comfort zone. So that's very dangerous. So if you consider getting out of that comfort zone, pushing yourself, then I actually need to encourage you, yes, push past that discomfort. But what I'm trying to get people to understand is there's a difference between discomfort and pain. And so we really need to, or discomfort in something that's truly dangerous for us. And in our own minds, we need to start making a distinction. Let's switch sides. So you might want to, if you're going to do this exercise, which I encourage you to do, you might want to, in your own mind, say, okay, what are things that I do that I really don't like, that are uncomfortable, but that I'm believe are actually good for my health, and see if there's anything on that list. So for some of you, coming to this class or the Monday class might be on that list. Like, I don't enjoy it that much. I don't like the way I feel, but I actually believe that this is making me healthier. Same might be true of food choices. So I have increasingly in my own life decided to eat food less and less for entertainment. And you may not think of it that way, right? You might think, well, I eat food for nourishment. Well, that's questionable the way that most of us eat, because there are many things that we can eat that are very good for us, very nutrient rich, nutrient dense, really good for us, but it may not be our favorite dish. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with eating for pleasure every now and then, but is that every meal? That every meal needs to be this, spectacular um, you know, circus of flavors and things that we like. And so then we're pretty much eating for entertainment, and we're eating to um, almost more for our own comfort than for nutrition. And again, no need to feel guilty or bad about that. That's what most people do, but it's something to be aware of. What is driving me when I make food choices? Is this truly nutritious for me, good for me, or is it that, oh, I like this? And so again, we can kind of look at our lives and see, do I have things in my life that I'm doing that I don't particularly like, might be uncomfortable, like cold showers, being in a sauna, maybe going for walks, different things. Do I have things that I'm doing that maybe I don't particularly like, but I know are actually good for me? And then again, things like certain foods, certain activities, we may still do them even though we know they're not the best thing for us, and that's fine. I do those things too. So, but I'm conscious of it. I'm not fooling myself that, oh, this beer is good for me. It's not. Alcohol is not good for you. There was a time earlier where there were some ideas floating around that, one or two glasses might actually be good for your health, but that's been basically debunked at this point. So when you have alcohol, it's fine, enjoy it, but don't kid yourself and think that you're doing yourself any favors in terms of your health. All the benefits that can be had through drinking alcohol can be had in other ways, and alcohol comes with a lot of downside to it. The only plus side I would say for alcohol really is if you enjoy it. Okay, so just enjoy it, but know that it's not great for your health. And then the other part is there is a social aspect to it, right? You kind of loosen up a little bit. You might be a little more talkative in a difficult social situation, and there's value in that. So I'm not saying there's no value, but in terms of your physical health, the cons outweigh the pros. There's just no question about that at this point. All right, let's unwind. So unfortunately for us as humans, there are many things that we can do that are difficult, that are uncomfortable, that actually enhance our wellness over the long term, our sense of well-being, our sense of wholeness, our ability to experience, love more fully. And then again, there can be things where we're pushing through the pain, where we're overcoming obstacles, and we're actually just doing ourselves and perhaps others harm. So I really encourage students to be cognizant, to be aware, and to ask that question, right? The next time you're pushing through resistance, ask yourself, is this really something that I'm pretty clear is going to bring me benefit over the long term? And then likewise, the next time you're running away from a situation, oh, I don't like that. Oh, I don't enjoy that. Ask yourself, well, is that something that actually maybe has been shown in studies or other people have reported actually can be really good for you? And you might want to reconsider your motivations in that case. All right, let's bring our legs in, give them a little squeeze, shake it out. So again, I would love it if I could make it so that everyone just felt amazing doing my classes. I don't ever try and make someone feel bad. But just having done this for so long, I know that some people don't like certain postures or certain practices or certain things. It doesn't automatically mean that it's not actually going to be good for you. And then the other side of the coin is certain things you might do, like again, running and pushing through the pain and doing a triathlon or being in some really competitive sport league where you have to push yourself beyond your limit. It may be very gratifying to a part of yourself to know that you can do that, but I've seen enough evidence as a yoga teacher that you can do some real permanent damage to your body that way. Okay, so I wish it were simple. I wish I could say, always push through resistance. Or I could say, if you're ever uncomfortable, just stop. But what I have to encourage you to do is maybe stop for a moment and ask these questions, right? Bring some mindfulness to what you're doing. All right, everyone. So if you want to relax for the next few minutes, that's perfectly good way to finish off the class. Otherwise, we rest between the postures and the yin, so there isn't as much need for that. As always, if you have any questions for me, you want to share something with me, just reach out and let me know. There was no class on Monday because of the holiday, but we'll have class this Monday, 12:30 as usual. Have a lovely weekend, and I hope to see you all then.